Thank you very much. What an afternoon. Fantastic. I think the wind outside is symbolic of what's going to happen in this province when the NDP starts blowing. That's what I think. That's what's going to happen. And it's just a privilege this afternoon on behalf of all of my colleagues, on behalf of everybody here, to do an introduction to a very special person. Nobody could have been happier than I was when I found out that this person was going to run for the leadership of the party when I announced that I stepped down. The person we're talking about is no stranger to challenge. He's a person who is brave and courageous and committed. In 1993, when the FFAW needed a new leader, it would take a person of courage, a person of wonderful character, a person of commitment to move into what he moved into. It took somebody who wasn't afraid of a struggle. He knew what the reality was. After 13 years before working with the union, he knew what they were facing because of what happened to the COD. And yet he took it on. So he has showed himself to be a fighter, showed himself to be somebody who's not afraid to take on challenge, showed himself somebody who doesn't have to be on, that everything's on top when he says, I will move in. A person of great quality. A person who is absolutely committed to justice for workers and for people. Because he was always on that side. As president of the FAW and before that, he was on the side of the fishing people. And when you're on the side of the fishing people, you're on the side of the community as well. It's all one in this province. The fishing people and the community are one. And he showed himself. He showed himself a person committed to their life, a person committed to keeping the communities alive, a person who wanted to be out there working for them, saying to them, I'm on your side. He had a really short retirement, God love him. I'm not even sure it was a whole month. But what has he shown? What did he show when he came out publicly and said he was going to seek the leadership? He showed that he believed that this province needs the NDP. He showed that. What he said was, I'm willing to give up a life of leisure to make sure that the values, that the principles, and that the goals of the NDP continue moving forward for the good of the people of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. He said to you, he said to all of us here, he said to the people he'd always represented, and he said to everybody else in the province, I'm not just an individual, I'm not just somebody who wants to retire and sit back and take it easy. I'm somebody who wants social justice and equality in this province, and I'm on your side. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am more than proud, I am more than honored and to welcome the leader of our party, the leader who is on our side, the leader who is on the side of this province, Earl McCurdy.
We good there, folks? Anyone on the stairs? We can squeeze you in here. Always room for one more in the NDP. We're going to have to make a lot more room than this before November 30th. Good day, folks. My name is Earl McCurdy, and I'm running to be the next Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you, Lorraine, for that introduction. There you are. And for being such a terrific MHA and leader of our party for so long. I'm proud to be here today to represent the values of the NDP. A stronger, more stable economy, steady jobs, accessible health care, dignity for seniors, educational and economic opportunities for young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We stand for ordinary people in this province, not well-connected insiders from the Liberal and Conservative parties. Mind you, I'm saying that strictly in a nonpartisan sense. One thing that we have to do in this, in this province is govern smarter. For too long, our focus has been putting Band-Aids on the symptoms and not enough attention paid to getting at the real root causes of the problems. And if we're going to get ahead, we've got to start having a serious conversation about those root causes and how we get to the bottom of them. Root causes like poverty, like mental illness, like lack of opportunity. You've got to feel those issues in your blood, folks. You've got to feel it in your heart. You've got to feel it in your gut. And it doesn't hurt to have the head come along and get in on the action too. It seems like we've been waiting forever, but finally the campaign is underway. Or to put it in terms that suit the launch on the lake, we're off to the races. I expect it will likely be dog eat dog and vice versa. Don't feel bad. That one always takes a few seconds to sink in. 2 words to keep in mind every day morning when you get up and every night when you go to bed. Campaigns matter. Anyone who thinks this campaign is over before it starts has another thing coming. Folks, we are going to make this interesting. That I can guarantee you. The leader of the PC party said at a panel I participated in with him and our counterpart from the Liberal Party the other day, one of many such events. I have to be more particular about the company I keep. But what the Premier said was, this campaign is about hope. And I agree, because I've met a lot of people who hope this is the last we see of the Progressive Conservative government. During the day when oil prices were at record levels and we had a brief window of serious prosperity in this province, or the opportunity to achieve same, the Progressive Conservative government was like the grasshopper who fiddled away through the summer instead of preparing for the fall and winter that everyone knew was going to come. They squandered that opportunity. We can't forget that that party is the party of Humber Valley Paving. The party of Bill 29. And the party of Dark NL. Their recent spending spree with our money in these last 30 days or so will not make anyone forget their track record. Enough about them. Now, take the Liberals. Please. The Liberals can't hide from their track record when they were in government. They can try, but we won't let them. The last time they were in power, there were layoffs of public sector workers in droves, healthcare workers, educators, civil servants, and others. The approach to difficult economic times was to shrink the economy further, which is the last thing governments should be doing when times are tough in the private sector. The last run of the last 10 years or so, because we've done that routine for ever and ever, 66 years since Confederation, liberal government, conservative government, liberal government, conservative government. Well, one of those times when it was a liberal government, what did they do? They tried their level best to privatize Newfoundland Labrador Hydro. The only reason it didn't happen was because of a tremendous backlash from the public of this province. The people of Newfoundland and Labrador would not let the government privatize a provincial asset as important as our power distributing utility. And if it wasn't for that, it'd be gone. They tried to privatize the provincial parks. And they tried to actually sell the crown jewels of our natural environment. And only in the face of a backlash did they pull back to the extent of only leasing it instead of selling it. And just this past few weeks, the Conservative government tried to finish the job for them. Mind you, none of that is unique to a liberal government in this province. Anybody who watches the news from Ontario will know that in the most recent election campaign, the leader of the Liberal Party in Ontario campaigned like Tommy Douglas and then got in power and started to govern like Tory Mike Harris. There wasn't a word said in the election campaign about privatizing Ontario Hydro. Not a peep. And yet now they're selling it off, and the analysis is showing they're getting a scant fraction of what it should be worth. In Nova Scotia, when they campaigned in the most recent election, it was a rosy situation. Everything was coming up smelling roses in Nova Scotia to listen to them in the campaign trail until they got in, and it's been chaos ever since, civil public sector layoffs and all kinds of turmoil. Now the provincial Liberal leader in this province, is kind of given to platitudes, if you know what I mean. And one of those little expressions he uses, and I've heard it over and over and over again. We're going to change from a culture of regulation to a culture of service. Now, just think about that for a minute. Mr. Ball, what regulations do you propose to get rid of? Would those be environmental regulations? Or safety regulations? Or a bit of both? We know what happened when what happened as a result of the deregulations of banks in the world. When governments got this bright idea, we'll leave the corporate sector to look after themselves, we'll take away throw out the rule book and let them govern themselves, and I'm sure they'll do a fine job. And that's what produced the mortgage bubble in the United States and the virtual collapse of the world economy. That came directly from deregulations. We know what happened when deregulation came into the transport sector. Just ask the people of Lac-Mégantic in Quebec what happens when you deregulate. So I think instead of platitudes, the game of dodgeball has to come to an end, and people got to start calling a spade a spade. And the Liberal leader is invoking the name of Justin Trudeau as if he were a member of the slate that's running for office next month. But folks, just to be clear, Justin Trudeau is not on the ballot in one single one of the 40 districts that they were good enough to leave there for people to run in. Not one. But the argument is, Justin and I are like that. I got to tell you, folks, I've been around the block a few times, and in my experience, we have never gotten a thing out of the federal government except when we fought tooth and nail to get it. Now, the Liberal campaign slogan has kind of been, "We're not the Tories." Number one, that's not much of a campaign platform. And number two, I kind of question the accuracy of that. Because I got to tell you, when the NDP motion to increase the minimum wage came, private member's motion came on the floor of a House of Assembly, the Liberals acted just like the Tories. They voted with them to put down that room. They voted together to keep those people in poverty or earn or next to poverty or working the minimum wage, 2 and 3 jobs, trying to keep a roof over their head, instead of giving them a bit of a break. When a bill came to the House of Commons, House of Assembly, designed to make it more difficult for workers to organize themselves into a union, the Liberals looked just like the Tories because they voted the same way, and they voted in favor of that, and only the NDP voted against it. So when they try and tell you they have an anti-poverty strategy, tell them, don't you be so foolish. Because if you had an anti-poverty strategy, you want to make it easier for workers to organize into a union to better themselves, and you certainly want to raise the minimum wage to give people a fighting chance in life. And I can tell you, any difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives was absolutely imperceptible when the time came for the late night fandango. When the two of them got together under cover of darkness up in Confederation Building and cooked up a scheme to diminish rural representation in the House of Assembly without by the way, with the people of the province, without any consultation whatsoever. They slashed representation for the population generally, and in particular to nail rural Newfoundland and Labrador. So, small wonder, in my occasional moments, I refer to them as Tweedledwhite and Tweedle Davis. Look at the privatization question. I've already talked about the Liberals' history in that. In recent weeks, the Conservatives have privatized just about, or tried to privatize just about everything, one after another after another. And then they say, well, sure, the private sector is more efficient. Well, who's your model? Mr. Davis? Would it be Enron, I wonder? SNC Lavalin? Humber Valley Paving? Then the Liberals try and kind of bury it in bafflegab. So you'll hear, and I have heard Liberal spokespeople talk about alternate service delivery. Now, guess what that is? Or, if you want to make it even more obscure, Dwight's favorite, performance-based infrastructure. Now, I got a question for you over there with the blue. Is performance-based infrastructure something you can buy at Walmart? Because who knows what, well, I'll tell you what that is. Actually, I do know. And I think a lot of others have figured it out too. Performance-based infrastructure is a version of P3. Pick the public's pocket. Also known as private-public partnerships. When you take vital services like looking after elderly people in their latter years of their lives, like looking after sick people in hospitals, like clearing the highways in a snowstorm, and so on. And you look at those and you say, instead of putting them to people whose sole mission in life is to deliver the service in an efficient manner, you turn it over to people with a profit motive. And when you have, because, and they always use the example of Chancellor Park here on Portugal Cove Road to say, well, you know, is that one to be all like that? Fact of the matter is, when you privatize those long-term care facilities and you put them out for bids, I can tell you who you're most likely to get. These big multinational corporations like Extendicare of over 100 private homes. And they have a legal responsibility to their shareholders to maximize profit. The menus will probably be done in Chicago. And for the poor seniors going in there, I doubt very much they'll see peas pudding again. They'll have someone going through the home saying, would you like to supersize your SpaghettiOs for an extra $1.50? It would be remiss of me, and so therefore I won't do it, to come here today and not talk about the elephant in the Newfoundland and Labrador room. And that elephant is the Muskrat Falls Power Agreement, its evil twin brother, the Power Purchase Agreement, the federal loan guarantee, and everything that goes with it. People in this province are facing whopping increases in their electricity bill very, very soon. Individuals, businesses, institutions, all going to get clobbered with massive increases in their power bill. And for some reason, well, it's obvious why the Conservatives don't want to talk about it, because they're the ones that brought it in the first place. Pretty obvious why the Liberals don't want to talk about it. They have the former chairperson of the board of Nalcor is running for the Liberals and is in fact their finance critic. So the silence on that issue has been deafening, but the impact that will have on the people of our province is extraordinary. And the ability to deal with it is lessened. We've been put in a kind of a diabolical political straitjacket by regulations provisions that say, even if we figure out a way to use less power, to be more efficient, to be environmentally responsible, we're going to have to pay the same price anyway. The unit price will just go up, and we still get clobbered. No, you're darn right it ain't fair. I mean, people say now, we think we had a dark NL before. Wait till everybody got to turn off the lights because they can't afford to have them on. People now are going up the village mall in the winter to walk around to keep warm. Well, when Muskrat Falls comes on stream, we'll need to build a piece on the village mall. I'll touch briefly on municipal assessments. I mean, that is a wacky system that's got to be fixed. I had the privilege yesterday of meeting with the municipal leaders in Gander and told them, here's what we're prepared to do. We think that system is broken and has to be fixed. We're prepared to sit down with the municipalities NL as an umbrella organization for the towns in this province and work out a new deal for municipalities, which would also be a new deal for the people who live in those municipalities. St. John's doesn't qualify for this particular category, but I'm going to talk briefly about small communities. I've worked virtually all my working life with people in small communities. And they're priceless assets in our province, a major part of what we're all about in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I was struck by an interview with a woman a few months ago when there was a woman in her community who had been seriously injured in a car accident. And she organized a fundraiser to help that woman cope with her loss of income and associated costs. And in that interview, the interviewer praised this woman who done the fundraiser for her good works. And her answer really stuck with me. She said, "Isn't that what living in a small community is all about?" And friends, that's exactly what living in a small community is all about. That's what being a Newfoundlander and being a Labradorian is all about. We have each other's back. We have a sense of community. We have to stick together. That's what we're all about. That's why we've lasted in this godforsaken place for as long as we have. When even on a fine day there's a hurricane of wind that would just about blow your head off. Those values of cooperation and community are the values of the NDP. They coincide ever so nicely with the values of the people of our fabulous province. Over the next 3 weeks, we will lay out a platform and a plan to deal with the challenges, and there are many, for the people of our province. I start tomorrow in Labrador City. In the meantime, it is a tremendous privilege to be part of this great team. Check them out, folks. We got a butcher, a baker, and a candlestick maker. We got them all. What a diverse team of talent. Accomplished people in any number of backgrounds and areas of endeavor. A terrific team, and I'm proud to have the honor of leading them. I have no doubt this is going to be an intense campaign. And I just put out a brief note of caution to everyone. This is moose season. You done? Don't get sidetracked by rabbits. Okay, but I'm not done yet. But I'm getting there. This election is about good representation. Anyone who's concerned and says, I'm driven above all, which we saw in the federal election, what counts above all to me is change. The current government has got to go. Relax. They're done like dinner. So you don't have to worry about that. And what people should start concerning themselves with is what kind of representation we want to replace the current regime with. And I got to tell you, every time a new Democratic candidate is elected to the House of Assembly is a victory for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I like to talk about our small but mighty caucus and what they've achieved. And you achieve things, you don't get them the first time you ask or raise them, but you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you keep pushing, and that's how you get things done. I congratulate the current government for their policy of changing their portion of the student loans to grants. And you know something? Our party started pushing for that back in the 90s, and it was every single platform, every time, every election since then. Lorraine Michael and that was Lorraine and Jerry Rogers and George Murphy in the House Assembly pushed for that. We continually harped on that. So I'm glad to see that not all that we say falls on deaf ears. The whole issue of mental health, which had been swept, and mental illness, which had been swept under the political carpet for so long in our province, the stigma around it sort of lulled people into not raising it, was really broken thanks to the work of a couple of extraordinary people who I'm very proud to have as running mates with me in this coming election, Jerry Rogers and Mark Roshi. And speaking of small but mighty, it was Lorraine Michael who started the fight on Bill 29 to say this is not good enough in a civilized society. We won't put up with it. And that gave rise, her raising the issues and exposing the sordid detail of that piece of legislation gave rise to a public backlash, and to the point that the Conservatives had to finally go, not to what they really believed they wanted to do in their heart of hearts, but to Plan B. Congratulations on that, Lorraine. We got not a healthy situation in Ottawa right now. Yes, we have a new government, but there's not one single member of Parliament from east of the Quebec-New Brunswick border who can rise on the opposition side of the House of Commons to question the government, to press the government, to push them, and to demand more. Not one. We, in this province, have not a single representative on the opposition side of the House of Commons. We need to bear that in mind in this election. We don't want people who will be like that with the Prime Minister and make deals in back rooms. We don't want someone who will stand up for Ottawa. We want someone who will stand up to Ottawa. Friends, our values are your values. They're the values of the Newfoundlander and the Labradorian. Everyone deserves a fighting chance to realize their dreams and aspirations. Together, on November 30th, we can replace dark NL with bright NL. If you're a parent wondering how you're going to possibly afford childcare, or making that dreadful decision I've been told by many people I've met in my canvassing in St. John's West they've had to make, of quitting their job because they're taking home less money than they had to pay out in childcare. Or if you're a young couple who's trying to make it is realizing that you can't even afford to have a family, then the NDP is on your side. If you're a senior wanting nothing more than to live out your latter years with a bit of dignity and respect, then the NDP is on your side. If you're a minimum wage earner, often juggling a couple of jobs, trying to scrape by from paycheck to paycheck, the NDP is on your side. And if you're staying awake nights wondering how you're having trouble enough paying the power bill now, what are you possibly going to do when Muskrat Falls power comes online? The NDP is on your side. We know the value of a dollar. We know the value of supporting one another. We know the value of a hard day's work. I believe that the people of this province are ready for a new government, and in the next 22 days, we'll make sure that we get the people of this province ready for the NDP. We can do it together. We're on your side. Let's get it done.